Lamborghini has been a prominent name in the world of supercars for decades, producing some of the most iconic cars in the world. But have you ever wondered, why don't they have a Formula One team? Well, as it turns out, Lamborghini's history with F1 is more complex than you might think, involving disappearing Mexican businessmen, catastrophically exploding engines, and secret cars that could have changed the racing world as we know it today. So, strap in as we rewind the clock and uncover why Lamborghini has been on the sidelines of F1 for so long. Our journey starts in 1963 with the founding of the brand by a man with quite possibly the coolest name ever, Ferruccio Lamborghini. Right from the onset, Ferruccio's main goal was to produce cars that were superior to those from Ferrari. So, naturally, you'd assume that this rivalry would extend to the F1 track, but no. Ferruccio had his sights firmly set on producing road-legal cars, believing motorsport would simply drain the company's resources. It seems that Ferruccio was right, as the financial and resource burden Formula One imposed caught up with Ferrari in the late 60s, leading to 50% of the Ferrari company being sold off in a bid to raise funding. But while Lamborghini had avoided the financial strain of Formula One, they were far from in the clear. The early 70s marked the beginning of financial difficulties that would plague the company for almost 2 decades. Over this time, ownership of the company passed through many hands until in 1987, it was bought by Chrysler, which is when Lamborghini's Formula One journey would begin. Chrysler meant business, establishing a new division of Lamborghini solely focused on motorsports, and in 1989 they took the plunge, joining Formula One as an engine supplier. Lamborghini tasked former Ferrari engineer Mauro Foggieri with the development of a new 3.5-litre V12 engine to be used by the French Larousse team. The engine sounded glorious and produced a mighty 600 horsepower, but there was one slight problem: it had a tendency to violently explode. I think it's fair to say that Lamborghini's venture into F1 so far can be described as tumultuous at best, but what happened next was just straight up bizarre. In preparation for the 1991 season, a young Mexican businessman by the name of Fernando González Luna approached Lamborghini. Luna had recently founded his F1 team Glass, and not only wanted Lamborghini to supply engines, but also wanted them to design and manufacture a full F1 car for his team. Lamborghini obliged, and by the summer of 1990, they had a rolling chassis that was ready for testing. But this is when things took a weird turn. Out of the blue, Fernando Luna just disappears. To this day, nobody knows what happened to him. And as Luna disappeared, so did the $20 million of funding he had promised, leaving Lamborghini with a massive financial burden. Having already developed their own engine and car, Lamborghini invested the funds needed to keep the project alive, but they were insistent that this venture into F1 was not a works team. Despite the car being officially entered into the championship as the Lambo 291, the former Glass team would not bear the iconic name, instead being rebranded as Modena. The Lambo 291 wasn't exactly a rocket ship on track. Combined with the heinously unreliable V12 engine, it failed to pre-qualify or qualify 26 times across the season. Modena was left financially crippled by the end of the season, leading to Modena ceasing operations before the 1992 season began. But the story doesn't end here, as Lamborghini would make a last-ditch effort to save their failing Formula One division. Up until this point, Lamborghini had mainly been supplying backmarket teams with their engines. But the head honchos at Chrysler had an idea. What would happen if they strapped their V12 Lamborghini engine onto a race-winning car? Well, in 1993, they did exactly that, partnering with McLaren to test their engine in a modified version of the McLaren MP48. Racing legends Ayrton Senna and Mika Hakkinen would put the car through its paces during testing, and the results were surprising to say the least. While it still wasn't reliable, with Hakkinen even claiming one of the engines exploding during Silverstone testing, the Lamborghini-powered McLaren was reportedly more drivable and faster than the Ford-powered MP48 being raced that year. In fact, the drivers were so impressed that Senna reportedly called McLaren boss Rob Dennis, telling him to seriously consider the switch to the Lamborghini V12. But alas, the Lamborghini-McLaren partnership fell through, with McLaren turning to Peugeot to supply their engines, which didn't exactly go well. This was one of the many factors that led to Senna leaving McLaren at the end of the 1993 season, massively influencing the history of the sport as we know it today. We can now fast forward to present day, where the Lamborghini brand has grown substantially under the ownership of the Volkswagen Group. So you've got to ask, why hasn't Lamborghini made another bid to enter Formula One? Well, this can be summarized best by their CEO, Stefan Winkelmann, who stated, "Formula One is something not part of our future, because when we speak about motorsports, it always has to have a relationship to the street legal cars." With Audi, who's also owned by VW, set to join Formula One in 2026, the chances of Lamborghini ever entering Formula One in the future seems slim to none. And honestly, this is smart by Lamborghini, because at the end of the day, they just don't need F1. And as Lamborghini sales are at an all-time high, it's easy to see why they would want to stay far clear of the multi-million-dollar dumpster fire a return to Formula One could potentially be.